Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. And now the Friday Crime Report. Starting a few years ago, black people began getting police regularly indicted and even convicted for their crimes, and began having white supremacists without badges put in prison for attacking black people. And that's why in the last 2 to 3 years in particular, we've seen this effort by the white media to counter this trend by trying to manufacture a phony narrative that black people are the real hate criminals. We're not doing any more coverage of black people who are the victims of hate crimes. We're going to look at any black person, any case, no matter how remote, no matter how irrelevant, where if there's a black person, especially a young one, who gets into an argument or a physical altercation with a non-black person, well, the white media is going to give that a headline and say it's a hate crime. And the DAs, who are only too eager to charge a black person with phony charges anyway, they have made sure to say hate crime for black people. Oh, we went from hate crimes being something that DAs wouldn't charge people with because it was too difficult, just too hard to convince a jury that it happened, the legal standard simply too difficult, to now they say it at the drop of a hat. But only if it's a black person that they're talking about. Now, they know, of course, that these phony hate crimes charges against black people won't stand scrutiny, and they're not meant to. What they're meant to do is to give the white media a chance to put up a quickie headline that they can use. This is the administrative arm of white supremacy feeding phony headlines to the propaganda arm. The white media knows that 90% of the people who see the white media's content are barely even paying attention to it. 90+% of them simply read the headline and move on. They never actually read the article itself. And the white media knows this. So when they put black teens and hate crime in the headline and make sure that there's pictures if they have them, what they know is that people across the board are going to see that and think, oh, well, we have seen a number of these headlines. Why, these black teens are out of control. You know, they're talking about hate crimes against them, but look at this. That's the point. That's the entire point. But, as you see in this case, the white media across the board make sure not to put white teens in their headlines. No pictures either. You see hate crime. That's the headline that you see here. Hate crime, no pictures, and no description of the hate criminals. All of a sudden, the white media is not putting the race of the accused into their headline. That's deliberate. You've probably heard of so-called rape shield laws. These are laws where the alleged victims of rape are shielded from having their identities publicized. Well, the white media and the legal system practices hate shield laws, where they protect the identities of the perpetrators of hate crimes. April 16th, 2022. Around 11 o'clock p.m., a 16-year-old black child, along with her younger sister and their mother, were returning home from a family outing. But when they got to their apartment complex, they had a gang of white supremacist youth who were there waiting for them in ambush. Now, one of these white supremacist youths was a 16-year-old male thug who yelled racial slurs at this family. He claimed that the girls had attacked some female who he said was a family member of his earlier that day. He didn't say how exactly he and this alleged family member were related, but considering how rampant inbreeding is among those white supremacists, chances are even he's not sure. One of the 16-year-old thug's cohorts, a 15-year-old female who was also yelling racial slurs, picked up a drainage grate and held it like a baseball bat and began menacing the mother of these black children. Now, the 16-year-old black girl, seeing the danger that her mother and younger sister were in, moved to protect her family members. That's when the 16-year-old racist thug stabbed this black child in the back with a knife, twice. The girl wound up being hospitalized with significant injuries. The male thug who stabbed the black child was charged with attempted murder and assault with a deadly weapon as well as a hate crime. His 15-year-old accomplice had been charged with attempted murder and hate crime charges as well. Open and shut case, right? But of course, as we know, under white supremacy, certain people are given genetic immunity from law. No matter what they've done, no matter the charges or the evidence, they'll just get a pass. It's automatic because the judges and prosecutors decided a long time ago that the law wouldn't be allowed to apply to some people. Now, the white media is claiming that they're not naming any of the teenagers because they're minors, but of course, as we all know, the white media routinely names black minors in their crime stories all the time. They're not naming the minors because they're trying to protect the white supremacist punks who tried to murder a child. This is about maintaining racial immunity from law and giving white supremacists anonymity. This was a case of attempted murder, racial slurs being hurled during the attack, so the prosecutors couldn't deny it was racial. But, as we've seen with the thugs with badges, you have these judges carrying out an organized, deliberate policy of abusing their position to subvert the law and give legal immunity to people who they know are proven to be criminals. We'll continue with the moment of truth in just a moment, but first, a word from the official sponsor of Black Empowerment, Power Tools. There's no telling when something's going to come up, so make sure you carry your power tools at all times. You never know when you're going to need to bring the hammer down, or when you'll have some trash that needs to be blown away, or some obstacle that requires cutting down. Don't get caught empty-handed. Keep your hammer close by. Keep that leaf blower at the ready, and always carry your steel. Power Tools. Because no matter what your day job or side hustle may be, there's no excuse for not being ready to put in some work. Now recently, one of the white supremacist assailants, the female who picked up the sewer grate to attack the mother, was found guilty of assault and a hate crime. Now, she had had a bench trial, which means there was no jury, so it was the judge who handled all the proceedings. It needs to be said this happened in California, the same California where Judge Aaron Persky was successfully recalled by the voters after he refused to apply the law in the Brock Turner rape trial. And the white media lectured the public and spread phony hysteria that this would make judges afraid to give lenient sentences, even in cases where it's warranted, and they made sure to mention minorities. Well, this crime happened in California, and it was black people who it happened against, so obviously if any judges are going to be scared stiff to give a lenient sentence, it's going to be the same California where Aaron Persky got recalled, right? Because the white media is never wrong and would certainly never lie. Right? Well, I'm sure you can guess how scared or intimidated the judge was to give a lenient sentence in this case. The prosecution had only asked for a measly 2 years, a slap in the wrist for the crimes committed. The defense attorney for the attempted killer said that this white supremacist hate criminal was a 15-year-old human being. That's how the defense attorney described this criminal. That's debatable, but to say that in open court, this is a 15-year-old human being, well, that is to say that the black victims were not human beings. Obviously, this corrupt judge agreed, saying that the defendant would receive no jail time for threatening 3 people, attacking 2 of them, and helping take part in trying to kill 1 of them. A judge decided that this racist punk, for all the serious crimes that were committed, only needs to attend a 120-day therapy program. By the way, those so-called urban therapy courses, that's supposed to be for low-level offenders or teenagers with disciplinary problems. You know, teens who defy their parents or who act up in school. It's not meant for hate criminals who take part in felony attempted murders. This wasn't some fast-in-the-behind heifer who decides to smoke weed outside of school every once in a while or who keeps stealing cosmetics from the local Costco. This is a racist punk who tracked a family to their home, threatened them where they lived, attacked 3 people, and tried to kill 1 of them. As I and others have documented for you from these corrupt judges' own forked tongues, they don't make rulings or hand down their sentences based on the law. They do it based on what they personally want to see happen. Laws be damned. That's what these corrupt judges themselves have admitted. This is why, as we saw with the Persky case and others, the public is drawing no distinction between the perpetrators of these crimes and the judges who intentionally, openly abuse their positions to ignore the law and deliberately protect violent criminals from punishment. This is why the public regards these judges as accomplices after the fact, because they are in all but name. We hear a lot from the white media these days about how the public needs to respect judges. If you want the public to respect judges, then the judges will have to start respecting the law. The male thug who was wielding the knife used in the attempted murder has yet to go on trial. The prosecutors asked for a hearing to see if he can be tried as an adult, and that hearing is scheduled for October. So this corrupt judge is slow-walking this case in the hopes the public interest will fade so she can give this guy a slap on the wrist too. Keep in mind, this was an attack by a white supremacist gang on a black family at their home. This is exactly what happened to John White in New York. You recall I told you about him? He was the black father whose son had been attacked by a gang of violent white teens at a party. And their reason for attacking this black child? One of the white teens said Mr. White's son had disrespected a white girl. Different years, different cities, different coasts. And yet, the lies remain exactly the same. Well, Mr. White defended his family from the racist punks who literally came on his property to harm his family. And the racist in New York sent him to prison for that. But of course, we understand his real crime was being a black man who defended his family against white supremacist aggression. In this case, you have another black family attacked, and the court went out of its way to show that it's on the side of the attackers. This was not a sentence that the judge was giving out, this was a racial message being sent. The courts will selectively refuse to punish anti-black violence, and they have to do it blatantly and openly so that everybody clearly understands what this message means. This is an invitation, an incitement by a corrupt judge to threaten, attack, and even kill black children. While the white media is working hand in hand with the DAs desperate to manufacture the lie that black people are the ones committing hate crimes because two adults got into an argument. Meanwhile, you haven't heard anything about this case, have you? Black children and their mothers being stalked and ambushed at their homes by gangs of white supremacist teenage punks. No, the white media is not keen at all to tell you about this story, or the dozens of others just like it, because that doesn't fit the narrative. This is not about news. This is about social programming. It's becoming harder for prosecutors to rig these juries, and Kim Potter's conviction by an all-white jury showed just how much immunity from law the thugs with badges have lost, and Ahmaud Arbery's family doubling down on making sure the animals who murdered him were sentenced to life not once but twice over the Biden Justice Department's objections. That was twisting the knife and showing, yeah, we'll go back and take a victory lap on you bastards. The more this happens, the more white supremacy faces the threat of anti-black violence being punished simply as a matter of course. In other words, justice becoming the law of the land. White supremacists are cowards. Few of them are willing to try some racial ambush, and fewer still are willing to try it if they know that they won't be able to avoid going to prison for it. You can't maintain a system of racial oppression without targeted violence against the oppressed. But no one will be willing to carry out that violence unless they know they can do it with impunity. Black activism has begun to ever so subtly erode the social acceptability of anti-black violence, and the white media is on a jihad to reverse that trend. What they're doing is trying to get people to ignore or even to condone anti-black violence with the false narrative that black people are committing hate crimes. This is simply meant to muddy the water and give people who are already predisposed against black folks an excuse to look the other way when they see a black person harmed and know that it's a hate crime and just go, well, I heard that some black folks did something, so it's all the same thing. Get people on code so that prosecutors can once again go back to blatantly refusing to bring charges, and that nobody's going to object when judges deliberately abuse their position to hand down the wrong sentences for blatant crimes. Nothing happens in a vacuum under white supremacy. This goes for their victories as well as their defeats. And that's this Friday's Crime Report. Keep your eyes open and stay on alert, because now more than ever, there's a lot worse criminals out there than the ones that the white corporate media chooses to show to you. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Brian Walton, Sakina Collins, Brian Williams, Deborah Cooper, and Gail Johnson. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.